Again, Israel, today's presentation will be called The Beginning of Knowledge. We will use this presentation to make a distinction between the holy and the profane, even dealing with this word knowledge. Our brother Yamin Israel will read Psalms 5 and Psalms 9 for us all, and then we'll get straight into this great presentation, which will be called again, The Beginning of Knowledge. Are you ready, my brother Yamin?
Yes, I am.
All right, you can go ahead and get started. Psalms 5.
Hello, everyone. As my brother stated, I would love for everyone to turn to Psalms 5, please. That is Psalms 5. It reads, "Give ear to my words, O Yahweh. Consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my Elohim. For unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Yahweh. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not an Elohim that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak least. Yahweh will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship toward thy holy temple. Lead me, O Yahweh, in thy righteousness, because of my enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wicked. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O Elohim. Let them fall by their own counsel. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions. For they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee, let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Yahweh, will bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield. Hallelujah!
Hallelujah.
As my brother stated, I would love for everyone to turn to Psalms 9, please. That is Psalms 9. It reads, I will praise thee, O Yahweh, with my whole heart. I will shoot forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. I will sing praise to thy name, O thou most high. When my enemies are turned back, they shall fall and perish at thy presence. For thou hast maintained my right and my cause. Thou sattest in the throne, judging right. Thou hast rebuked the heathen. Thou hast destroyed the wicked. Thou hast put out their name forever and ever. O thou enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and thou hast destroyed cities. Their memorial is perished with them. But Yahweh shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment, and he shall judge the world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness. Yahweh also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee. For thou, Yahweh, hast not forsaken them that seek thee. Sing praises to Yahweh, which dwelleth in Zion. Declare among the people his doings. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble. Have mercy upon me, O Yahweh. Consider my trouble, which I suffer of them that hate me. Thou that liftest me up from the gates of death, that I may shew forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in thy salvation. The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. Yahweh is known by the judgment which he executed. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Higion Selah. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget Elohim. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Yahweh, let not man prevail. Let the heathen be judged in thy sight. Put them in fear, O Yahweh, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. Selah. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
Hallelujah. verse. 1 second. Y'all ain't on mute, Mildred.
It had muted you. I don't think that it's muted everybody, including yourself. I don't think you were recording.
You just came on.
I know, because I don't think I couldn't hear you on my end. Could anyone else hear him? I don't think so, Sammy. Something wrong with it.
Try to mute it right quick, Mildred.
Okay. Samuel. You couldn't record. It's
Shalom.
I'm still working on it, Samuel.
All right. Technical difficulties. Yeah, I don't know what's up. I was just rolling. Then Mildred and my grandchildren bust in on the line. So, and then I seen where you called me twice, and Sister Dinah said that the call done went out, and then Brother Cephas hit me and said the call went out. So I don't know.
Somebody else on the line that can hear your conversation right now. Hear us talking. Somebody can hear us talking right now. So obviously you still on the line some kind of way.
Yeah, because Mildred is up there on the computer. She upstairs. I'm downstairs. She upstairs on the computer trying to get together. So we probably can hear each other, but I don't know why they couldn't hear on the call. I'm still on the call.
Oh, yeah, because Westcott can hear you right now.
Who?
See, I can hear you on her phone right now.
Who?
Eve.
Okay, that's because I got the phone that I do the presentation on my head, you know, that got the mouthpiece, and I'm talking to you on the cell phone. So that's probably why, because I'm talking through it. I ain't took it off my head. Huh?
You probably put music or something. Is this being recorded too?
I don't know. I don't know what people done heard, you know. I don't know where I dropped off. I'm rolling.
Yeah, as soon as you start talking, drop off. As soon as you start talking about the presentation and all that, drop right off.
Oh, so ain't nobody heard none of the chapters and verses I gave.
None of that.
Oh man. Oh man, and I was all the way down on I've just found out I was in Genesis the 6th chapter. So I done read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I done read like 7 different chapter and verses before I actually knew where I was at. I mean, knew that wasn't nobody really on. Sorry for the inconvenience. We are having technical difficulty. For some reason, the recording has dropped it. I had went on with the presentation thinking that we are all on the board, but unfortunately, we were not. I done received several messages that the call had dropped. So we hoping and praying that everyone is back on. Can somebody send me a couple text messages to let me know if they are receiving the recording before I get started? Because I was almost quarter way done with the presentation, and I don't think it was being recorded, nor was y'all able to hear me. So I might have to start all the way over. Can someone let me know? Brother Cephas, Sister Dinah, anyone let me know if y'all are receiving the call now. I haven't received anything yet. Are they muted? All right. All right, they saying all good. I guess they can hear me. Okay, I'm getting calls saying that y'all can hear me now. Sorry about the inconvenience. Might just be another way of telling us we need to get on another platform, the YouTube or something like that, I guess, because I don't know what happened. As I stated, I was halfway or at least a quarter way done with the presentation. I'm going to have to start it over because I would love for this presentation to be recorded. That way it will be available for anyone that would like to hear it again after today. So we're starting over. Sorry for the inconvenience. Again, this presentation is called The Beginning of Knowledge. Of course, we love to ask Yahweh to allow the words of our mouth and the meditation of our heart be acceptable in His sight. Yahweh, our strength and our Redeemer. We will pick up at Proverbs, the 1st chapter, starting this presentation. And it tells us in Proverbs, the 1st chapter, if we pick up at the very first verse and read to the 7th verse, and it reads, Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall obtain into wise counsels. To understand a proverb, the interpretation, the words of the wise, and their dark sayings. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, and this is where we get the title of today's presentation, the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. It also tells us in the 2nd chapter of Proverbs, if we read the first 10 verses, and in warning to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil, it tells us, my son, if thou will receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thy ear into wisdom, and apply thy heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shall thou understand the fear of Yahweh, and find the knowledge of Elohim. For Yahweh give wisdom. Out of his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. And this is the knowledge that we are using today to make a distinction between the holy and the unholy. It tells us again in the 6th verse, for Yahweh give wisdom. Out of his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He lays up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a butler to them that walk uprightly. He keeps the paths of judgment and preserves the way of his saints. Then shall thou understand righteousness and judgment and equity, yea, every good path. when wisdom enter into thy heart, and knowledge is pleasant into thy soul. It also tells us in the 3rd chapter of Proverbs, if we pick up at the 3rd verse and read to the 7th verse, dealing with the beginning of knowledge, it tells us, let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thy heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of Elohim and man. Trust in Yahweh with all thy heart, and lean not into thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. And the paths that we are praying and trusting in Yahweh to direct, we read about in the 2nd chapter of Proverbs. And those paths was paths of righteousness. It is found in the 9th verse of the 2nd chapter. And those paths that we are to trust in Yahweh to lead us was paths of righteousness, paths of judgment, paths of equality, yea, every good path. So it tells us again in the 3rd chapter, the 6th verse, in all thy ways acknowledge Yahweh, and Yahweh shall direct thy paths. The last verse reads, be not wise in thy own eyes. Don't be on your own path. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Genesis, the 2nd chapter. Genesis, the 2nd chapter. And teaching about the beginning of knowledge, we find in the beginning, which is the book of Genesis, the first book of the Torah, and we find in this book the creation of Elohim and the wisdom that he used to make all that he formed. Well, in the 2nd chapter, we also find the beginning of knowledge. And this is where I would love to pick up in the book of Genesis to establish the beginning of knowledge. Thus, it tells us in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, the very first verse. Thus, the heaven and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And Yahweh blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rest from all his work which Yahweh created and made. These are the generations of the heaven and of the earth when they were created in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens, the beginning of knowledge. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For Yahweh had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist. Note that the mist went up from the earth in the beginning and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahweh Elohim formed a man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the beginning of knowledge. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasses or compass the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is Beldam and the oxen stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compass the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Hediel. That is it which goes toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. And Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him into the garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. And Yahweh Elohim said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him an helpmate for him. And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them into Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. And Adam gave name to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him. And Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her into the man. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bone, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Also, we find in the book of Genesis the beginning of knowledge, dealing with the fall of man. If we pick up at the 3rd chapter, and let's start reading at the 1st verse, and it reads, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath Elohim said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. This is the knowledge of the serpent, being put up against the knowledge of the holy. The 5th verse reads, for Elohim does know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as Elohims, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired, to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. And they heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim amongst trees of the garden. And Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam, and he said unto him, where art thou? And he said, I have heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he became naked from the knowledge of the serpent. And he said, who told thee that thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou should not eat? So the knowledge that they took heed to allowed them to disobey their Creator, where Adam's wife took of the tree that she should have not touched and gave to her husband, and they both received the knowledge of good and evil. Thus they knew that they were naked. Thus the 11th verse reads again, and Yahweh said, who told thee that thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou should not eat? And the man said, the woman whom thou gave to me, gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And the serpent beguiled her with his knowledge, which did not denote the knowledge of the holy. The 14th verse reads, and Yahweh said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shall thou go, and dust shall thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, and sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shall thou eat of it all the days of thy life. thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shall thou eat bread, till thy return to the ground, for out of it was thy taken. For dust thy art, and into dust shall thou return. And Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And to Adam also, and to his wife, did Yahweh make coats of skin and clothe them, instead of the aprons that they had made based on receiving the knowledge from the serpent. It also tells us in the 22nd verse, and Yahweh Elohim said, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Therefore Yahweh Elohim sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Also we find the knowledge in the beginning. If we take a look in the 4th chapter of Genesis, and it tells us in the 4th chapter of Genesis, if we pick up at the 3rd verse and read to the 14th verse, and it reads, and in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Yahweh. And Abel, he also brought of the firstling of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And Yahweh had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And Yahweh said unto Cain, why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And into thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And that is sin being his desire, and sin ruling over him. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. And Yahweh said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And this civil rivalry is even happening today, because we do not fear Yahweh, nor do we depart from evil. We do not find ourselves doing well, thus sin lies at the door. And we are witnesses that Cain is slaying his brother every day. Among our babies, we hear about black on black crime every day. And it is a result from the knowledge that has been given from the beginning. It continued to tell us again in the 10th verse, and he said, what hast thou done? the voice of thy brother's blood cries into me from the ground. And now art thy curse from the earth, as Adam and Eve was cursed, or the earth was cursed for their sakes. It says, and now art thy curse from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face. And later on, in retrospect, we find the same thing happen to the chosen people, that Yahweh had installed upon them the statutes of life. When they forsook Yahweh, when they no longer feared Yahweh, when they no longer departed from evil and did that which was well, the same thing happened to them. As it reads again in the 14th verse, behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And that's the same punishment that befell the chosen people. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that find me shall slay me. It also tells us, if we take a look at the 5th chapter of Genesis, I would like to pick up at the 22nd verse. For it tells us in the 5th chapter of Genesis, the 22nd verse, dealing with the beginning of knowledge, it tells us, and Enoch walked with Elohim after he begat Methuselah 300 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch was 365 years. And Enoch walked with Elohim, and he was not, for Elohim took him. And Methuselah lived 187 years, and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. And Lamech lived 182 years, and begat a son. And he called his name Noah, saying, this same shall comfort us concerning our work and our toil of our hands. Why? Because of the ground which Yahweh had cursed, based on the knowledge that we just obtained in the 3rd chapter of Genesis. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. Please take note of how long these people lived. And all the days of Lamech was 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We also find, dealing with the beginning of knowledge, in the 6th chapter of Genesis, and it reads, and it came to pass when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And Yahweh said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So it allows us to know, because of man not fearing Yahweh and departing from evil and doing well, their longevity was cut down to 120 years. Right after we just read that the man that was born to be a comfort concerning the work and the toil of man's hands, which was none other than Noah, even though he was created and formed for the comfort of man, we find in this 6th chapter that man was not doing well, to where the Almighty cut their longevity from 969 years to 120 years. And right before, I think this is where I was at, before I realized that the phone had dropped, I had everybody to go to Psalms 90, because I wanted to use Psalms 90 in reference to what we just read in Genesis 6 and 3, dealing with the 120 years. Thus, it tells us in Psalms 90, if we all turn there, please, and please forgive me for going a little faster than I normally go, just trying to catch back up. It tells us in Psalms 90, the 9th and 10th verse, for all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 80, that is 80. A score is 20. So there is 3 scores in a 10. The days, I said 80, I meant to say 70. It says the days of our years are 80 years, that is 60, and 10, that is 70 years. And if by reason of strength of one fearing Yahweh and departing from evil and doing good, it says, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, that is 80. That's still 40 years less than the 40 years less of the 120 years. Yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knows the power of thy anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So it allows us to know that man's days was cut because they did not fear Yahweh and because they did not do well. Thus, it tells us in the 4th verse of the 6th chapter of Genesis, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented Yahweh that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with Elohim, as we read that Enoch did. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. And Yahweh looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupt his way upon the earth. They were no longer on the paths that Yahweh had set man to be upon. And Elohim said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence, as it is this day, through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. It also tells us, Israel, if we take a look at the 12th chapter of Genesis, dealing with the beginning of knowledge, the 12th chapter of Genesis. And it tells us in the 12th chapter of Genesis, the blessing that Yahweh put upon the one that he hath chosen. And it tells us in the 12th chapter, I'll go straight to the point. It tells us in the 12th chapter, if we read the first 3 verses, now Yahweh has said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, into a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thy shall be a blessing. The 3rd verse reads, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curse thee. And in thee, please take note, Israel, shall all families of the earth be blessed. We find these same words of promise dealing with the beginning of knowledge in the 15th chapter. And it tells us in the 15th chapter, if we pick up at the very first verse, allowing us to know and see the beginning of knowledge. It says, after these things, the word of Yahweh came into Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceedingly great reward. And Abram said, Master Elohim, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is my hire. And behold, the word of Yahweh came unto him, saying, this shall not be thy hire, but he that shall come forth out of thy own bowels shall be thy hire. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, look toward heaven, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yahweh, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh, that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And that's the same thing that you find later on in retrospect in your holy scriptures when it's dealing with Abraham's seed, which was called the children of Israel. It is noted throughout your entire scriptures that Yahweh is the one that brought them out of Egypt and to give them this land to inherit forever. And he said, Yahweh Elohim, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said it to him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, and horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterwards they shall come out with great substance, and thou shalt go to thy father in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt and to the great river, the river Euphrates. The same things we read in the beginning, that is found in the 2nd chapter of Exodus or Genesis. The Kenites and the Kemuzites and the Kidmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Gershites and the Jebusites. So according to the beginning of knowledge, these are the things that were known. These are the things that were said and done. And then it tells us, if we take a look at the 17th chapter of Genesis, for in the 17th chapter of Genesis, it tells us, if we pick up at the very first verse, and when Abram was 99 years old, when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty Elohim, El Shaddai. Walk before me and be thy perfect. And I will make note, walk before me as Enoch walked, as Noah walked. He's telling Abraham to walk in his seed. I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be thy perfect. To fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. walking in the paths of Yahweh, you are perfect in the eyes of your Creator. Thus, the second verse reads, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be called Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a Elohim unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. And Elohim said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore the reason why, thou and thy seed after thee in their generation. It also tells us, dealing with the knowledge of the beginning, if we pick up and take one more look in the beginning, which is Genesis, in the 26th chapter of Genesis. Genesis, the 26th chapter. And I am using these chapter and verses to show the knowledge of the beginning, and how the knowledge of the beginning was to be used throughout your entire life, no matter what generation it is upon the earth. Thus, it tells us more knowledge of the beginning. If we take a look at Genesis, the 26th chapter, and let's pick up at the 3rd verse and read to the 5th verse. And it reads, sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee, for into thee and into thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abram, or Abraham, thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give into thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. This is the same knowledge that was given from the beginning. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So it allows us to know, with this great knowledge of the beginning, when man is in obedience, he is truly blessed, and he is known as being perfect when he fear Yahweh and depart from evil and walk in all the paths of the holy. Thus, it tells us, if we turn our scriptures to the book of Job, the book of Job. dealing with this great subject matter, the beginning of knowledge. And what we find in Job is the same great words that we find about Enoch, we find about Noah, we find about Abraham. We find these same words of knowledge, which denoted the beginning. Thus, it tells us in Job, if we turn to Job, the first chapter, and let's read the first 5 verses. And it reads, there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. And according to this story, and according to the time and place of this story, this denote a time of Abraham. Even though chronologically ordered or chronologically placed in our scripture is not the correct order, it is known that the book of Job was during the times of Genesis, the beginning. So we find by way of testimony, it reads in the first book of Job, the first verse, there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared Elohim and eschewed, hated evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 500 yokes of oxen and 500 she-asses and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the east. And his sons went and fasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sacrificed or sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, as we should say, that it may be that our sons have sinned and cursed Elohim in their heart. Thus did Job continually. Now there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them. And Yahweh said it to Satan, which comes thy? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said it to Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that fear Elohim and hate evil? And note the description of one that walked with Elohim. Note the description of one that is perfect. And note what it took to be perfect. And also note, with this adversary being involved, it allows us to know that one always has the power to fear Yahweh and depart from evil, no matter what situation they find themselves in. Thus it reads again in the 8th verse of the first chapter of Job. And Yahweh said it to Satan, the adversary, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fear Elohim and eschew or hate evil? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, does Job fear Elohim for naught? Hast thou not made an hedge about him and about his house and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands. That's what you get when you fear him and depart from evil. And his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thy hand now and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And a good example of that today is our current situation. All the adversity, that's what Satan denotes, adversity, adversary. So all the adversity that you have endured since you've been on this earth is not enough to stop you from fearing Yahweh and departing from evil. And that's the example that we are getting from the beginning of knowledge. Today, we use a lot of knowledge that is obsolete, and it means nothing. And we use that knowledge to allow us to walk forward. And the walk that we find ourselves in is the wrong walk. We're not on the paths that Yahweh placed us on because we feel that we can't fear Yahweh, because we're not under the covenant of the law, or because we're not in the land of promise. Well, the knowledge of the beginning allows us to know that you didn't have to be under the covenant of the law, nor the land of promise, to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil, to walk with him on the paths that Yahweh has set man on. Thus, it continued to tell us in the 12th verse. And Yahweh said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy hand. It reads, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon him put not forth thy hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of Yahweh. And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating, talking about Job, and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger into Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, the fire of Yahweh is fallen from heaven, and have burnt up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, the Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return tighter. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh hath taken away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. In all this, Job stayed on the right path. It reads, in all this, no matter how much adversary came his way, in all this, Job sinned not. And the Almighty told us at the beginning, if thou does well, shall not thy be accepted? If thou does not well, sin lies at the door. Where it allows us to know, out of all the adversary that Job experienced, he did well. He did not go against the fear of Yahweh. He continually departed from evil. Thus it reads, in all this Job sinned not, nor charged Elohim foolishly. It also tells us in the second chapter of Job, dealing with the knowledge of the beginning, or the beginning of knowledge, it says again, there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them to present himself before Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Satan, from which comes thy? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fear Elohim and eschew evil, and still he hold fast his integrity. So when you find yourself in a funky situation and you are attacked by all matters of adversary, the Almighty is allowing us to know that we have the free will and strength to continue to fear him and to depart from evil. It is not an excuse because of what you find yourself under to not fear him and to start doing evil. But it allows us to know, no matter what situation you find yourself in, under the law or not, a wise man will fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Thus, it continued to read in the second chapter of Job, in the third verse, and Yahweh said, picking back up in the 3rd verse. And Yahweh said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fear Elohim, and eschew evil, and still he hold fast his integrity. And that's all I'm asking you to do today, Israel. Hold fast to your integrity. No matter what you've been taught, no matter what you're enduring, hold fast to your integrity. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Who knows if this is a test? Thus it says, although thou movest me against him, to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered Yahweh and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man have will he give for his life. Well, even in this case, you ought to fear Yahweh and depart from evil. The 5th verse reads, put forth thy hand now and touch his bones and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And Yahweh said unto Satan, behold, he is in thy hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of Yahweh, and smote Job with sores, balls from the sole of his feet into his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself with him, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife, please remember the knowledge we have received from the beginning. In the 3rd chapter of Genesis, it reads, then said his wife unto him, does thy still retain thy integrity? Do you see what it takes to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil? It is something that you have in yourself that nobody or nothing can take from thee except yourself. It says in the 9th verse, then said his wife unto him, does thy still retain thy integrity? Curse Elohim and die. Why suffer like this? Why believe that Yahweh will establish you and see you as perfect because you fear him and depart from evil? It says in the 10th verse, but he said unto her, the wife of his youth, thy speakest as one of the foolish women speak. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of Yahweh? And shall we not receive evil? And all this, and we know the answer to that. The answer is yes, because at the beginning there was a tree that was the tree of good and evil. So both of them is coming by way of Yahweh. The 10th verse reads again in its entirety, but he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speak. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of Elohim, and shall we not receive evil? And all this did not Job sin with his lips. So we get what we find in this knowledge of the beginning is that Yahweh said what he mean, and he mean what he said from the beginning. And man, and not just man, but everything that Yahweh has created was to reverence Yahweh, was to fear Yahweh, and was not to do evil. As we seen the first earth being destroyed because the imagination of man was only evil. So he destroyed the earth, except the man that was walking with him, to put man back on the righteous path. because they had fallen off the righteous path when man's imagination was only evil. It also tells us in this great book, if we take a look at the 28th chapter of Job, the 28th chapter of Job, and let's take a look at the 28th verse. And it tells us in the 28th chapter of Job, the 28th verse, these great words. And to man, he said, as I just read, every verse we just read was to man. And to man, he said, behold, the fear of Yahweh. That is wisdom. And to depart from evil is understanding. So man was to always fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. As the wise man Solomon said, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. We also find, dealing with the fear of Yahweh and the beginning of knowledge and the benefits thereof, if we turn our scripture to the book of Proverbs, the 4th chapter. Proverbs, the 4th chapter. And we are trying to make a distinction between the carnal knowledge and the knowledge of the holy. And what we find from the knowledge of the holy is that if you fear Yahweh and depart from evil and walk with him, you are perfect in his eyes. Not so with the knowledge that we find among the carnal or the common man, but we are finding out today, reading out of the Holy Scriptures and dealing with the beginning of knowledge denotes the fear of Yahweh and to depart from evil. And it's allowing us to know that we don't have to be under the law to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. We don't have to be doing good. We don't have to be well. We don't have to be healthy to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. Even if you find yourself in those despicable situations, you are to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. Why? Because it is Yahweh that can bring you out of those things and set you back upon your feet, where your feet is on the right path once again. And that's what the beginning of knowledge reveals to those that read it. Thus it tells us in Proverbs, the 4th chapter, and it reads in the first verse, hear, ye children, the instruction of a father, and Yahweh is truly the Father, and attend to know understanding. For I give you good doctrine. Forsake ye not my law. For I was my father's son, tender and only beloved in the sight of my mother. He taught me also and said unto me, let thy heart retain my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom. Get understanding. Forget it not, neither decline from the words of my mouth. Forsake her not, and she shall preserve thee. Love her, and she shall keep thee. Wisdom is the beginning. It reads, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor when thou dost embrace her. The knowledge of the beginning, the knowledge of the holy. It tells us, she shall give to thy head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory shall she deliver to thee. Talking about wisdom. Hear, O my son, and receive my sayings, and the years of thy life shall be many. I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in right paths. When thou goest, thy steps should not be straitened, and when thou runnest, thou shalt not stumble. Take fast hold of these instructions. Let her not go. Keep her, for she is thy life. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Enter not into the paths of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it. To avoid it is to depart from it. Pass not by it. Turn from it and pass away. For they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away, unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness, and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the just, those that fear Yahweh and depart from evil, is as the shining light that shine more and more into the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. My son, attend unto my words, incline thy ear into my sayings. Let them not depart from thy eyes. Keep them in the midst of thy heart, for they are life unto those that find them. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil, for it is truly life, or words of life, instructions and knowledge of life, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Put away from thee a forward mouth and perverse lips. Put far from thee. Let thy eyes look right on, and let thy eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all, not some, but let all thy ways be established. As it read in Proverbs 3, trust in Yahweh in all thy ways, acknowledge him. It says in the 26th verse, ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand, nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. That is telling one to depart from evil. It also tells us, dealing with the benefits of wisdom, if we take a look at the 8th chapter of Proverbs. And it tells us in the 8th chapter of Proverbs, if we pick up at the 10th verse. The 10th verse, and let's read to the 13th verse. It tells us in the 10th verse of Proverbs 8, receive my instruction and not silver, and knowledge, the knowledge of the holy, the beginning of knowledge, which is fear, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. Our wisdom dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of Yahweh is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the forward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding, I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. It also tells us, if we take a look at the 6th chapter of Proverbs, the 6th chapter of Proverbs, and it tells us in the 6th chapter of Proverbs, if we pick up at the 16th verse and read to the 19th verse, these great words of knowledge. And it reads, these 6 things does Yahweh hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. And what are they? We must know what they are to depart from them. And it reads, and this is the same knowledge that we find in the beginning. Thus it reads, a proud look, or haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that devise wicked imaginations. That's why the earth was destroyed in the beginning. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. A false witness that speak lies. These are the things that Yahweh hates. And if we are walking and holding fast to our integrity, we are to eschew them as well. We are to hate them as well. That is the only way that you can fear Yahweh. Thus it reads, a false witness that speak lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren, are the 7 things that Yahweh hates, and we are to hate them as well. For we just read in the 8th chapter of Proverbs, where it said in the 13th verse, the fear of Yahweh is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the forward mouth do I hate. And I just showed you 7 more things that Yahweh hate. That one that is holding on to their integrity, fearing Yahweh, must eschew or hate as well. It also tells us, and continue to tell us in this great book called Wisdom, if we take a look at the 14th chapter, the 16th verse. My dear brother spoke today and talked about how many times he had witnessed the word fear throughout the volume of the book. And that word fear denotes the beginning, the word of the beginning to the word that is used at the end. Fear is found throughout your entire Holy Scripture because fear was due toward your Creator always. Thus, we find in the book of Wisdom, if we take a look at the 14th chapter, the 16th verse, it reads, "A wise man fear and depart from evil." Look what they call you. "But the fool rage and is confident." That means he is not fearing Yahweh, nor is he departing from evil. Instead, he is raged and confident in the evil that he speak and do. It also tells us in this chapter, if we take a look at the 26th and 27th verse of the 14th chapter of Proverbs, and it reads, I'll pick up at the 25th verse, and it reads, "A true witness delivers souls, but a deceitful witness speaks lies. And the fear of Yahweh is strong confidence. And his children, our children, we that fear Yahweh and depart from evil," it says, "and his children shall have a place of refuge, because they daddy and they mama fear Yahweh and departs from evil." It tells us in the 27th verse, "The fear of Yahweh is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of evil," or as it reads, "from the snares of death." It also tells us in the 15th chapter of Proverbs, if we take a look at the 15th and 16th verse, and it reads, "All the days of the afflicted are evil, but you still can fear Yahweh and depart from evil," as we've seen in the book of Job. Thus it reads again in the 15th verse, "All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart have a continual feast." Better in that feast, better is little with the fear of Yahweh than great treasures and trouble therewith. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred dwells. It also tells us in the 16th chapter of Proverbs, if we pick up at the 4th verse and read to the 6th verse, I'll go to the 7th, and it reads, "Yahweh has made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. Everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination. And we just read that in the 6th chapter. It reads again, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to Yahweh. Though hand join in hand, even though it's a bunch of y'all, and a bunch of y'all refusing to fear Yahweh, it lets us know he shall not be unpunished. I don't care how many people you join hands to, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to Yahweh. Though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. The 6th verse says, by mercy and truth, iniquity is purged, and by the fear of Yahweh, men depart from evil. And I would just like to include this 7th verse, which reads, when a man ways pleases Yah, that man that's fearing Yahweh, that have departed from evil, when a man ways pleases Yahweh, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. That's just one of the benefits. It also tells us in the 19th chapter of Proverbs, and it tells us in the 23rd verse, the fear of Yahweh tends to life, and he that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. Why not? Because he fear me, and he departs from evil. It also tells us in the 22nd chapter, if we turn there, please. And it reads in the 22nd chapter of Proverbs, if we pick up at the 1st verse and read to the 6th verse, and it reads, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and poor meet together. Yahweh is the maker of them all. A prudent man foresees the evil, and he turns from it. He hides himself, but the simple passes on and are punished. By humility and the fear of Yahweh are riches and honor and life. Did you get that? By humility, by humbling yourselves, and the fear of Yahweh are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the forward. He that does keep his soul shall be far from them. And this keeping the soul, this knowledge from the beginning, we were to give to our children, that they may fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Thus the 6th verse reads, train up a child in the way he should go, according to the beginning of knowledge, according to fearing Yahweh and departing from evil. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. It also tells us in the 23rd chapter of Proverbs, let's take a look at the 17th verse, and it reads, let not thy heart envy sinners. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. It reads, let not thy heart envy sinners, But he died in, I can't really see that. But B died in the fear of Yahweh all the day long. It also tells us, if we take a look at the 28th chapter, of Proverbs, and it reads, and from the 10th to the 14th verse, whoso causes the righteous to go astray in an evil way, he shall fall himself into his own pit. But the upright shall have good things in possession. The rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that have understanding search him out each and every time. When righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory. But when the wicked rises, a man is hidden. He that cover his sin shall not prosper, but whoso confess and forsake them shall have mercy. The last verse is the 14th verse that I'll read, and it reads, happy is the man that fear always, but he that hardens his heart shall fall into mischief. You don't have to believe this presentation, but if you don't fear Yahweh, and if you don't depart from evil, you can rest assured you will fall into mischief. And it also tells us in the 30th chapter of Proverbs, in closing, dealing with these great words of wisdom, fearing Yahweh and departing from evil, the psalmist just wants you to know all that I have brought forth today using the book of Proverbs. It tells us in Proverbs 30, verse 5 and 6, every word of Yahweh is pure. He is a shield unto them that fear him and depart from evil. He is a shield unto them that trust in him and acknowledge him in all their ways. It reads, he is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add thy not into his words. You don't need to say no more than fear Yahweh and depart from evil, lest he reprove thee and thy be found a liar. Also, let us turn our scriptures to the book of Malachi. The book of Malachi, the first chapter. The book of Malachi, the first chapter. And it tells us in the book of Malachi, the first chapter, if we take a look at the 6th verse, and this question is asked to us all, especially while we are giving this lesson, the beginning of knowledge. The question is, as it reads in the 6th verse, a son honors his father, and a servant his master. And I started these at the beginning to let us know who is the master, to let us know who is the father, to let us know who is the creator and why we should be fearing him. Thus it reads in the 6th verse of the first chapter of Malachi, a son honors his father, and a servant his master. If then I be a father, where is my honor? And if I be a master, the creator, where is my fear? Said Yahweh of hosts. And to you, O priests, that despise my name, and ye say, wherein have we despised thy name? Well, one way you truly despise his name is because you have not feared him, nor departed from evil. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Psalms 111, Psalms 111, to continue to show the beginning of knowledge and what it truly denotes. Psalms 111, and let's pick up at the very first verse. Psalms 111. And it reads, Hallelujah! Praise ye Yah. I will praise Yahweh with my whole heart in the assembly of the upright and in the congregation. The works of Yahweh are great, sought out of all them that have pleasure therein. As we read in the second chapter of Proverbs, where it says, when knowledge is pleasant unto thee, it continued to tell us in the third verse, his work is honorable and glorious, and his righteousness endures forever. He hath made his wonderful works to be remembered. Yahweh is gracious and full of compassion. He hath given meat unto them that fear him. He will ever be mindful of his covenant. He hath showed his people the power of his works, that he may give them the heritage of the heathen. The works of his hands are verity and judgment. All his commandments are sure. They stand fast forever and ever, and are done in truth and uprightness. He sent redemption into his people. He hath commanded his covenant forever. Holy and fearful, it reads, holy and reverent is his name. And this reverence denotes a clean fear. And then it ends in the 10th verse by saying, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Here it reads, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endures forever. It also tells us in the book of the law, if we take a look in Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. And it tells us in Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter, if we take a look at the 12th verse. Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter, the 12th verse tells us, and now, Israel, What does Yahweh thy Elohim require of thee? What is required? What was the knowledge in the beginning? It says, but to fear Yahweh thy Elohim, to walk in all his ways, or to walk in all his paths, and to love him, and to serve Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart and all thy soul. It also continued to tell us in the book of the law, if we take a look at the 6th chapter of Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter of Deuteronomy, and it reads in the first 2 verses, now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahweh your Elohim commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it, that thou mightest fear Yahweh thy Elohim, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life. We are to fear Yahweh and depart from evil all the days of your life, if you under the law or not, and that thy days may be prolonged. It also continued to tell us in this great chapter, if we pick up at the 13th verse of the 6th chapter of Deuteronomy, and it reads, thou shalt fear Yahweh thy Elohim, and serve him, and shall swear by his name. Ye shall not go after other gods of the people which are round about you. For Yahweh thy Elohim is a jealous Elohim among you, lest the anger of Yahweh thy Elohim be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. Ye shall not tempt Yahweh your Elohim, as ye tempt him in Massa. Ye shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, and his testimonies, and his statutes, which he hath commanded thee. And thou shalt do that which is right and good in the sight of Yahweh, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest go in and possess the good land, which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers, to cast out all thy enemies from before thee, as Yahweh has spoken. It also tells us, if we take a look in the book of Isaiah, the 29th chapter. Let us turn our Holy Scriptures to Isaiah, the 29th chapter, to continue to see that the beginning of knowledge is to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. Thus it tells us in Isaiah the 29th chapter, if we pick up at the 9th verse, and let's read to the 14th verse, thus it reads, stay yourselves and wonder, cry ye out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yahweh hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and have closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, have he covered, and the vision of all is become into you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I cannot, for it is sealed, and the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I am not learned. Wherefore Yahweh said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth, they don't fear me, nor have they departed from evil. It reads, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear, making a distinction between the knowledge of the holy and the knowledge of the carnal man or the common man. Thus it says, and their fear toward me is taught by the precepts of men. And I wonder, is those precepts the same teachings that our brothers and sisters teach according to Isaiah, the 28th chapter, line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little, that they may fall. Because if you are fearing Yahweh today based on man precept, you are not fearing Yahweh, nor have you departed from evil, and you shall fall, or you shall be visited with mischief. For it reads in this 13th verse in its entirety, wherefore Yahweh said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precepts of man. Therefore, the reason why, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding, which is the principal part of their prudent man, shall be hid. It also tells us, if we take a look in the book of Jeremiah, the 17th chapter, we're coming to a close. We have a few more chapter and verses, and then we will end the presentation. But we just want you to see the beginning of knowledge. What was known in the beginning? And is this knowledge is to be taken and held fast with our integrity to the end? Are we to fear Yahweh and depart from evil forever and in all times? And the answer is yes. Thus, it tells us in the 17th chapter of Jeremiah, if we pick up at the 5th verse, and it reads to the 13th verse, thus said Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusts in man, that's under man precepts, and make flesh his arm, and whose heart depart from Yahweh. For he shall be like the heath in the desert, and shall not see when good comes, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land and not inhabited. But blessed is the man that trust in Yahweh, that fear Yahweh, and depart from evil, and who hope Yahweh is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spread out her roots by the rivers, and shall not see when heat comes. But her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yahweh, search the heart. I try the ruins. I know if you fear me. I know if you departed from evil or not. Thus the 10th verse reads, I, Yahweh, search the heart. I try the ruins, even to give every man according to his ways, and according to the fruit of his doings. As the partridge sitteth on eggs, and hatches them not, so he that get riches, and not by right, shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at his end shall be a fool. A glorious high throne from the beginning is the place of our sanctuary. O Yahweh, the hope of Israel, all that forsake thee shall be ashamed, and they that depart from me shall be written in the earth. Why? Because they feared not Yahweh, nor did they depart from evil. It reads, because they had forsaken Yahweh, the fountain of living waters. It also tells us in the book of Ecclesiastes, let's go back to the book of wisdom, and it tells us in the book of Ecclesiastes, and let's pick up at the 11th verse, and let's read to the 13th verse. And it tells us in the book of Ecclesiastes, the 8th chapter, the 11th verse to the 13th verse. And it reads, to try to continue to install fear in us all. For it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men, those that don't fear Yahweh, those that refuse to depart from evil, it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it will be well with them that fear Elohim, according to the beginning of knowledge, according to the knowledge of the holy. It says, I know that it shall be well with them that fear Elohim, which fear before him. The last verse I will read is the 13th verse. But it shall not be well with the wicked, those that refuse to fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Neither shall he prolong his days, which are as a shadow. Why? Because he feared not before Yahweh. And it also tells us in the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes, and let's pick up at the 9th verse. And we will close in this chapter at the 14th verse. And it reads, in the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes, picking up at the 9th verse. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge, and the knowledge that I am teaching today is called the beginning of knowledge. The knowledge that I am trying to give out today is that it is wise to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil, no matter where you find yourself at, no matter what generation it is. If you under the covenant of the law or not, it is truly wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the holy to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. Thus it reads again in the 9th verse of the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth from the beginning. The words of the wise are as galls and as nails fastened by a master of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And further, by these, my son, be acknowledged of making many books. There are a lot of knowledge, but the knowledge that we are concerning ourselves with is the beginning of knowledge, which denotes the fear of Yahweh and departing from evil. The 12th verse says, and further, by these, my son, be acknowledged of making many books. There is no end of knowledge, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter, and let's deal with the beginning of knowledge. It reads, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Elohim and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For Yahweh shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. It also tells us, if we take a look in the book of Proverbs again, at the 9th chapter, Proverbs, the 9th chapter, and let's establish what we brought forth today and what knowledge we have found today. For it tells us in Proverbs, the 9th chapter, if we pick up at the 10th verse, and it reads, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. And that's all we try to do today and bring forth today, the beginning of knowledge, and let the world know that that beginning of knowledge denoted to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Psalms 128. But before we read Psalms 128, we coming to a close. We got 2 more chapters. So I want to interject this chapter, and then we will read Psalms 128. So before we go to Psalms 28, let's go to Psalms, I think it's 14. Psalms 14. And then we will read Psalms 128. And then we will close with Isaiah 66. Right now, we all should find ourselves in Psalms 14. And it reads, and I want to bring this out to allow us to know there is a difference between he that fear Yahweh and depart from evil, and he that fear Yahweh that does not fear Yahweh and does not depart from evil. And he is called the one that don't fear Yahweh and does not depart from evil is called a fool. Thus it reads, the fool have said in his heart, there is no Elohim. What is that man talking about? Fear Elohim and depart from evil. The first verse says, the fool have said in his heart, there is no Elohim. They are corrupt. Those that talk like that, those that believe they don't have to fear Yahweh nor depart from evil, the Almighty say they are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that does good. Yahweh looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and seek Elohim. They are all gone aside. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that does good, no, not one. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge? They don't have the knowledge of the holy. They don't have the knowledge that they should fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Thus the fourth verse reads, have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread and call not upon Yahweh? There were they in great fear, for Elohim is in the generation of the righteous. Ye have shamed the counsel of the poor, because Yahweh is his refuge. Oh, that the salvation of Israel were come out of Zion, when Yahweh bring back the captivity of his people. Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Well, let's see the response to that. Let's turn to 128th division of Psalms. The 128th chapter of Psalms. And it allows us to know in the 128th division of Psalms, based on what we just read in the 14th division, it tells us in the 128th division, blessed is everyone that fears Yahweh. Do you get it? This is speaking about those that truly reverence Yahweh. Blessed is everyone that fear Yahweh, that walk in his ways, on his paths. For thou shalt eat the labor of thy hands. Happy shall thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thy house. Thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that fear Yahweh. Yahweh shall bless thee out of Zion, and thou shalt see the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's children, and peace upon Israel. And in closing, Israel, let us all turn our holy scriptures to Isaiah 66, and I will close the presentation called The Beginning of Knowledge on this note, in this wise. Isaiah 66, please. And we will read the first 5 verses in closing. Isaiah 66 in closing. And it tells us in Isaiah 66, if we pick up at the very first verse, and we will read to the 5th verse in closing. Thus it reads, Thus said Yahweh, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that ye built unto me? Where is the place of my rest? For all those things have my hand made, and all those things have been said, said Yahweh. But to this man will I look, even to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit, and trembles at my word. He that kill an ox is as if he slew a man. He that sacrifice a lamb as if he cut off a dog's neck. He that offer an oblation as if he offer swine blood. He that burn incense as if he bless an idol. Yea, they have chosen their own ways. They are on their own path. They don't fear Yahweh, nor have they departed from evil, and their soul delights in their abomination. I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I speak, they did not hear, but they did evil before my eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not. The 5th verse in closing. Hear the word of Yahweh, ye that trembles at his word, that fear him in his word. Your brethren, who was speaking in the 14th chapter of Proverbs, the 14th chapter of Psalms, it says, your brethren that hate you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, let Yahweh be glorified, but he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed. And the only reason that he's going to appear to your joy is because you have linked upon your integrity and feared Yahweh and departed from evil, and they did not. So they will be ashamed with the knowledge that they have brought forth. But you would not be ashamed, but instead joy would come toward you for the knowledge you have received, because the knowledge that you have received is the beginning of knowledge, which denotes to fear Yahweh and depart from evil. That will be the end of the presentation called The Beginning of Knowledge. And I hope and pray that we have all understood the knowledge of the beginning of knowledge, and that knowledge of the beginning is none other than to fear Yahweh and to depart from evil. That will be the end of the presentation. We will open up for comments and questions. You might try to unmute yourself, because it looks like we might be having a problem in getting you off the mute. Once we finally got you on the mute and the lesson coming out clear, so you might can unmute yourself to ask any questions or to have any comments. But it ain't plugged up. Have anybody tried to unmute themselves? Do it from your phone. Do it from your phone. That might. Shalom, Israel. I thought I just heard somebody hang up. But you can't really hear nothing. Can y'all try to unmute yourself or say something to see if we got y'all on mute? I think everyone can still hear me. We just can't hear you now. Once we got y'all together where y'all can hear me, we can't hear y'all now. So it looks like we're going to go ahead and end the presentation. You can write down your comments and ask them the next presentation. With me not being able to hear y'all, we won't really be able to do the comment and question part of the presentation. So I'll go ahead and end the presentation with Psalms 115. Before I read Psalms 115, I want to thank each and every one of you for lending the ear that you may hear, that you may fear Yahweh and depart from evil, and apologize for the inconvenience that we have brought forth today. We will end this presentation with Psalms 115. Hopefully it is all recorded and you will be able to re-listen to the presentation in another day or so. Sorry for the inconvenience. We are all going to Psalms 115, and I will read Psalms 115 for us all in closing. And it reads in Psalms 115 for us all, not into us, Yahweh, not into us, but into thy name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, where is now their Elohim? But our Elohim is in heaven. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Nose have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throats. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusts in them. O Israel, trust thy in Yahweh. He is their help and their shield. O house of Aaron, trust in Yahweh. He is their help and their shield. Ye that fear Yahweh, trust in Yahweh. He is your help and your shield. Yahweh has been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless them that fear Yahweh, both small and great. Yahweh shall increase you more and more, you and your children. Ye are blessed of Yahweh, which made heaven and earth. The heaven, even the heavens, are Yahweh, but the earth have he given to the children of men. The dead praise not Yahweh, neither any that go down into silence. But we that fear Yahweh and depart from evil, it says, but we will bless Yahweh from this time forth and forevermore. Hallelujah, 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 and shalom, Israel.